Biden is basically a small-time crook from Claremont, Delaware. I mean, I grew up in Cape May. Lived.
In this interview with Jim Rickards, the focus is on analyzing President Biden's recent speech, rather than delving into specific policy issues. Rickards critiques Biden's demeanor, particularly noting his use of vulgar language and what he perceives as overstimulation, possibly through drugs, during the speech. He also comments on Biden's energetic presentation, which he attributes to potential medication effects rather than genuine vigor. Rickards describes Biden's speech as more of a campaign address than a traditional State of the Union, suggesting that Biden's focus is squarely on the upcoming election. He highlights Biden's departure from protocol in his introduction, indicating a lack of presence of mind or awareness of his surroundings. Overall, Rickards offers a critical perspective on Biden's speech, focusing on demeanor, protocol breaches, and a brief commentary on a tax proposal, all within the context of an impending election year.
I want you to close it. What I'm not going to do is go policy issue by just kind of spewed out a long list of them. We're going to do this. This summer climate is something that we'll talk about some of that, but had this long list of things. My views, our readers are very tuned in. They have their own views on that. We're not, and we're not politicians. We're analysts. So if you want an open border, vote for Biden. If you want to build a wall, vote for Trump. If you want higher taxes, go for Biden. If you want lower taxes, vote for Trump. We can leave that to readers. Everyone can make up their own mind, decide what they want to do on that. And so I want to really deal with a higher level about demeanor, the intent of the speech, whether it succeeded or failed, and its political intent. And then a little bit on some of the policy issues because they make a difference. The first couple of things that shocked me. Number one, he was very vulgar. He kept saying, what the hell, or do you hear abuse, or hell, which is not blasphemous, at least in the Catholic Church. But it's certainly profane in a lot of churches and absolutely vulgar by every definition. If you're having a couple of beers with a friend with some friends, and you want to spice up the conversation a little bit, that's fine. But instead of the union address, I think to use that particular choice of words I would put in the vulgar category. But Biden is basically a small-time cook from Claremont, Delaware. I mean, I grew up in Cape May, graduated from high school there, lived there many times. My family still lives there. I have relatives in Delaware and other places very well. It's mostly chemical plants, refineries, and chicken farms. And, Wilmington turned into a little bit of a regional financial center thanks to Biden, but he's kind of a small-time guy and acted that way. So I kind of made a note of that, reading the headlines this morning, and I watched the speech. I'll give you my own views, but the headlines, at least in the liberal pressure, New York Times and Washington Post economists, some others, they said Biden was fiery, feisty, energetic. He was trying to refute the notion that he's old, senile, feeble, and not stepping on his feet, basically physically and mentally, somewhat incapacitated. That's the image you get just from watching him. But it was an opportunity for him to have a big platform and rebut all those images. So he came out, very loud, very direct, talking very quickly. And that was interpreted by the New York Times is, a fiery speech. No, he was drugged up. I mean, I don't know whether or not a doctor, just to be clear, but whether it was painted by Fat Man or methamphetamine or what kind of speed they were using the thing with drugs, the kind of drugs that they inject him with before the speeches. They don't take you from being lethargic to normal. They take you from being lethargic to being hyperbolic. Like at the other end of the spectrum, temporarily you crash the next day. I'm sure there's nothing on his calendar today, but that's what he was. He was. And you can fake it for a couple of hours. There's no question about it with the right combination of drugs. I'm very attuned to body language. His left eye was closed during most of it. Like why not the other has abrasions on his chin? They had the makeup was really heavy on one side of his face. I don't know what was up with that over super high def TV. I guess I noticed all this stuff. So no. I wouldn't describe it as energetic and forceful. I would describe it as angry screaming, and the kind of demeanor you get from somebody who has been pumped up for drugs for the occasion. I think there's very little doubt about that. Because when we see Biden and all these other settings, he can barely talk. So that was so obviously a vulgar and hyped up would be pretty good. Pretty good descriptions. It wasn't really a State of the Union address. It was a campaign speech. Okay, it's an election year. He's trying to win. We have a view. And a lot of other people said the same thing, that he might be replaced between the end and not before the end of the primary season. But you can't wait till the convention, and convention is August 19th. Primary season's over at the beginning of June. So sometime in mid to late June, just for an estimate that he might be pushed aside and replaced with another candidate. We don't want to spend time on that view right now because it's, there's time for that. But Biden didn't act like anyone other than somebody who's running for president as far as he's concerned. The campaign is on us. It's Biden versus Trump. He's been a star this week, by the way. Oh, this Demeanor issue. He got out to the podium. I've seen a lot of State of the Union addresses. There's a whole protocol before you actually get into the speech. And one of them is the sergeant at arms, who is kind of a floor director, if you want to call it that. Security officer of the House of Representatives. There's the initial applause. Manny walks in and shaking hands. Lots of applause, gets to the podium. The sergeant art says, "Ladies and gentlemen,